When it comes to creating positive change in your life, there's no shortage of tactics for you to follow. 10-step plans, morning and evening routines, business masterminds, fitness boot camps. But then there's the deeper stuff. The words that you hear a lot, but it can be hard to put a finger on just what they mean. Mindset, awareness, purpose, presence. These are the things that philosophies and religions talk about. These are the deeper parts of humanity that endure market cycles and generational shifts and new technology and different tastes. And even though some of these are harder to quantify, that can be exactly the reason that they're so impactful. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors are hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, a board licensed coach who has been helping people just like you create lasting change in their health, wealth, and relationships for over 12 years. Abraham Maslow said, "The ability to be in the present moment is a major component of mental wellness." The ability to be fully present is a skill that will pay you dividends across all areas of your life. The people you most like spending time with, the people who get the deals, the people who make connections, the people who we as a society value as individuals, have all cultivated their presence. And that's something that you can do as well. And that's what today's guest, Harry Sherwood, is all about. Harry Sherwood is a presence and holistic life coach. Harry wanted to learn to be more present in his life, so after college, he moved to China to live and study with Shaolin monks. Harry has learned from monks, yogis, martial art masters, professors, psychologists, and he now uses the profound insights that he's taken from all of these different paths to guide people into fulfillment, wholeness, and an expanded awareness in their mind, body, and spirit. In this conversation, Harry and I talk about what holistic wellness means and why it should matter to you, why we lack awareness in many different areas, and how you can start to shift into a higher state. We talk about what Harry learned from living with the monks in China, as well as the negative aspects that we often don't think about when we think about a path of growth. And the big takeaway I had in this conversation came when Harry explained how you can notice and eventually replace negative coping mechanisms in your life. So make sure to listen for that and enjoy this conversation with Harry Sherwood. What is the definition to you of holistic living?
For me, holistic living is really about am all of is all of my being present? Am I aware of the different aspects of myself that are interacting with the world? And how do I bring those things into my awareness so that things like my emotions and my emotional development, my psychology and that development, my spiritual development, my body, the different aspects that make up all those things and how they inform my life, right? When I'm brought up in a certain culture and a certain society with certain beliefs and different things, like all that informs how I interact with the world. Am I aware of those things? How I feel on a moment to moment basis, physiologically, am I aware of those things? And so it's really about bringing in the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects and allowing them to inform my time here and have them kind of dance in this much more coherent fashion as opposed to all doing their own thing and not really all here in presence.
That's a very succinct definition. I like that a lot. And the way you say that those three different, would you call them pillars, kind of dance together, the what was it, spiritual, physical, emotional?
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
Physical,
So
mental,
yeah,
emotional.
four of them.
Okay. And can you just dig a little bit deeper into what each of those entails?
Yeah. So just physically, a lot of what I do with people is just getting them back into their bodies. And I say back into because a lot of people have kind of checked out or dissociated from their bodies throughout the different experiences of life. So am I just aware of what sensations are passing through my body in this moment? Am I aware of how it feels to be in my body? Is it uncomfortable or is it something that I have found comfort in? I notice that I have some tension in my lower back or in my jaw. I notice that I have this knot in my gut, or I notice I have a lot of space in my chest or whatever it might be. Like, am I actually aware of those things? And then also learning more about, hey, how does this body function? What is the stress response that I get when I am in certain kind of spaces and places with the heart body, mind body connection, the heart brain connection? How does my nervous system, all those things interact with my day-to-day basis.
I am so pumped to tell you about my partnership with My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the world's leading nutrition coaching platform that helps people find their healthy weight and keep it forever through sustainable habit change. If you listen to this show, you know that we do not suffer from a lack of information. Most people know what they need to change. The problem is actually sticking to it long enough to see results. When it comes to diet, exercise, and getting in shape, My Body Tutor solves this problem by giving you customized plans, one-on-one coaching, and daily accountability. As a bonus for you, they are offering $50 off your first month. What makes My Body Tutor so unique is they offer daily accountability with a real human coach. That's someone to check in with you, talk to, plan with, someone who can help you when things are going hard. It's not ChatGPT, it's not some algorithm. This is a real human. I know because I'm one of them. I have been working with My Body Tutor as one of their tutors since 2020. With so much nonsense and misinformation and just bad actors out in the health and wellness space, My Body Tutor is helping people the real way. They are changing lives. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Check out mybodytutor.com, where you can see hundreds of testimonials and reviews. And remember, listeners of this show get $50 off their first month. Just click the link in the show notes or go to mybodytutor.com and tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you in your intake questionnaire, and you'll automatically get a huge discount. On top of that, they offer a money-back, risk-free guarantee. So this is really a no-brainer. And like I said, I really do work for them. So if you've ever wanted to work with me personally, you can even request to have me as your body tutor. How cool would that be? Once again, just say Paul sent you and get $50 off your first month, start with no risk, and see how the power of a coach with daily accountability can literally change your life.
So that's physiological. Mental is much more kind of hey, I have noise going on in my head all the time if I really pay attention to it, or at least most of the time. Am I, number one, aware of that I have this just thinking station going on all the time? And number two, what does it say? How is it interpreting the world? A lot of what our mind or our psyche's job is to make meaning of life, right? To interpret life as it comes in so that I can be safe, so that I can survive, so that I can thrive in life. And so am I aware of kind of the different shades that it has picked up and how it interprets reality over time? And how does that impact me? And then the emotional is really around, hey, what have I experienced in my life? What traumas do I have? How do I respond emotionally, energetically when I'm around certain people, when I'm around certain situations, when I'm by myself in a room, and kind of understanding what pain points do I have? What things excite me? How do those interact with each other? How do those interact with the other two pieces that we've already talked about? So the emotional intelligence and cleaning that up. And then the spiritual aspect for me is really about finding connection and harmony with life. And if I sit in a room alone and just stay present, can I do that? Or does the restlessness of the mind or the pain of the emotions or my body just start fidgeting so much that I actually can't find a connection to what is? And in that what is it isness, can I learn to really be with it and find this, I could be with life as it is and deepen that energetic connection, that felt sense of this larger unity. And that's a rabbit hole that we can go down. All of them are. But that's kind of, I think, to go double click on them, but not go super in depth.
Yeah. So you said this word, I don't know, maybe 6 times already, and that is awareness. And I'm huge on awareness. And this is something I've been thinking very much about recently, in recent weeks and recent months. And so it's such a big thing to me. And I've taught this in my courses. I always say awareness is the first step. We can't solve a problem that we don't know exists. We can't change something if we aren't aware of it. But for something like you're talking about your body, you said become aware of your body, become aware of my thoughts. How is it that we can ever not be aware of these things? Like why, how could I am my body, I am my thoughts. So how is it that I'm not aware that I need to be taught something like this, or that this is even a conversation that we have to have?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question too. The question becomes like, why do we not grow up with this awareness of awareness? And so that's really what it is we're becoming aware of being aware. Like for me, presence is I'm aware of being present. I'm in the room, so to say. I'm always bringing people into the room, bringing people into the body. And so it's simply, I think in some ways it's just how we're raised, the culture, right? There are cultures that immediately teach about awareness and immediately drop people into that. Others that don't. I grew up in one that didn't. And even then, the amount of information that the brain intakes and the amount that we register are so massively different that we can train ourselves to kind of intake more and more of reality or parts that we just overlook. And a part of that has to do with a lot of going back to kind of the psyche and the brain, and its purpose is to really keep us alive. It's survival. And so when I'm intaking information, it's constantly assessing threat, non-threat, safe, not safe. And so when something is deemed as safe because it's familiar, then I actually no longer see it quite as acutely, right? It kind of blends into the background. And so it's very easy to start overlooking or becoming less and less aware of the things that are always there. And that includes my body, that includes my mind, that includes all those aspects we talked about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's almost like a paradox because what you said was there was familiarity becomes safety, and our brain is always looking for safety. We need safety to then know that we are in a state of survival, and that's when we can let our guard down a bit. But the thing is that when we are familiar with something, we stop paying attention to it. And then when we stop paying attention to it, it then becomes problematic because it's not getting the attention it deserves. So when that thing that we become familiar with is our body, is our surroundings, is our life, and we end up now in this place where we're kind of just going through the motions rather than paying active attention to the very thing that we should be paying the most attention to. Did I get that right?
Yeah. And I mean, the only word there I'd kind of highlight is the should used. Like it's whatever someone chooses, right? I don't want to say that you're wrong for not being aware or present or anything like that. However, there's a ton of benefits to it. It's very impactful to our health, to the amount of life force that we are connected to and breathe in a moment to moment basis. I mean, it becomes a way of kind of mindless living versus artful living, right? And in artful living, there's a beauty that is naturally birthed in that place. But yes, it really comes down to, I think you encapsulated it well, and it's just kind of reconnecting to what's around me right now. And like, am I literally in the room that I'm in right now? Or am I thinking about yesterday and all the things that happened? What so and so said to me, and I can't believe they said it to me. Or am I thinking about all the things I have to get done before the end of the week? And how stressed out I am about it, and how it's never going to work out? Or I'm thinking about how I feel lack of purpose. Like we're so often drawn away from this moment. We're so often taken out of this moment, avoiding this moment, numbing out to this moment, dissociating from this moment. And so really what this does is it drops us back into our lives, right? And if I'm always planning for tomorrow, then when tomorrow comes, what am I going to be doing? Probably planning for the next tomorrow, right? And I'd rather live this moment and that moment more fully, more wholly, going back to that wholeness living.
Yeah, and I appreciate you catching me shoulding. I try to be very mindful of my words, and I don't like to use that one in particular. I've done entire podcasts about specifically that word, and yet here I am still doing it. So that's just for anyone listening. Just know that I am surely not perfect, and we all fall into these same traps from time to time. But a lot of what you just talked about in general, I know from your background, there's pieces of Buddhism, there's pieces of Stoicism, Ram Dass, be here now, or that saying, be where your feet are is another one that I love. So you're kind of touching on all these different things. So could you go into a little bit of your educational background? And then my real question is, of all the different things that you've experienced, from living with monks to yogis to studying psychology, where did you find the most profound transformative shift that you've taken with you going forward?
And yeah, that's always an interesting question. I guess to answer the first part first, making it a long story short, is about 12 years ago, I went to China, studied Tai Chi and Qigong with Shaolin monks. Then I moved to the States and lived with yogis and monks. And then I went and got a religious studies degree. And then I went back to living with the yogis again after that. And then that led me into all sorts of different types of coaching and personal development, from meditation to life coaching to sports performance coaching to heart math coaching to circling coaching. And it just kind of has been a continued unfolding of deepening my development and my healing and my evolution and my growth. And from as many angles as I could approach. And I partake in various spiritual traditions as well, different meditative styles. Um, so within all of those, it's really hard to kind of tease out the most impactful because it's kind of like a staircase. My time with the monks was such a foundational piece to the rest of my journey, rest of my path, that nothing else can be mentioned without that mention. But then each staircase, due to that original kind of solid foundation, was really impactful because I started to see it through a different lens more and more. So I started seeing kind of different facets of the diamond, so to say. So I can't say that the mindset work was any less impactful than the somatic work, which was any less impactful than the meditative work, which was any less impactful from the intergroup dialogue work, which was any less impactful than the spiritual teachings and the psychology. So it's done is it's painted a larger and broader picture over time. And I value each one of them so much because they all are unique, yet they all could hold a piece of the other at the same time.
That makes an extreme amount of sense, of course, and you can't really pick and choose. Everything is impactful. So that kind of makes me think about what then maybe is a negative experience that you have that you value highly. Because all of those seem like awesome, positive experiences that is like, yeah, of course I can't choose between studying with monks and studying with yogis and getting my degree and doing mindset work. But what is something that maybe didn't seem so positive in the moment that you were able to take something out of and for yourself or for your clients or just for humanity?
Yeah, I love that question. When I kind of do the broad brushstrokes of the 12-year journey, I kind of touch on the fun parts, the parts that are like oohs and ahs. But if you zoom in and you spread that out, most of that time was spent fumbling. Most of that time was spent sitting in a room alone, really uncomfortable, feeling into this moment in a way where it's like, why can't I just sit here? This is so difficult for me in so many ways. And there was a lot of internal beliefs about myself that came up there, the lack of worth, lack of value, enoughness that came up. There's traumas that came up and having to learn and kind of heal through a lot of my childhood pains that kind of have highly influenced my adult life. And so a lot of it, honestly, has been more of a grounding into just, hey, what's here right now? Not trying to be this super evolved being, even though there has been development and healing. Um, I would say that it's been less romantic than it sounds at bird's eye view. And so it's really been walking through oh, knowing the path and walking the path are very different things. And sticking to it throughout all of that. And I could get, I guess, more, I could double click on any of that if you want me to, but that's kind of a general response to that.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that because I always think it's very important for myself or for any of the guests that I have on, myself being a coach, you being a coach, you having that life that you've lived, to always realize and explain to people that things are not all sunshine and rainbows. And it's very easy to, like you said, to do the broad strokes and the highlight reel and the things that people want to hear about because everyone wants to hear about living with monks and that kind of cool stuff. But to say, as you said it, that was basically 12 years of fumbling and interspersed with a few little things that in there that are fun to talk about. And I think that that's one of the many important takeaways to this for anyone listening is just like, this stuff is hard. Life is hard. There is no getting around that. And whether your heart is sitting at a cubicle at work or sitting in a room by yourself meditating for 12 hours a day, the end point comes back to that these things are hard and they are a part of the struggle. But that, to go back to what you were saying, what brought me to this question was, yeah, you were like, oh, I can't really discern between what is the most impactful. And that's what made me think of that, because to me, I always say everything that ever happened to me had to happen exactly in the way that it did happen for me to be here right now talking to you. So for better or for worse, or for good or for bad, there only is what is. I can think that it was a bad experience or a good experience, but it brought me here. And for that, I have to be grateful, because who knows where I would be if not for that. So that's something I always come back to be like, I'm grateful for everything because I'm here right now. And so I don't have to pick apart like, okay, this is the most impactful or something like that. Like everything, even the bad things are impactful in my life because I'm here, I'm alive, I'm breathing, I'm living here and I'm living right now. So I would though like to go back to what you were just saying about double clicking on one of those things and to actually get a little bit more granular in one of those maybe situations of something that stands out as one time that you really remember of like, yeah, this sucked and I got through it.
Yeah, absolutely. What immediately comes up as you ask that is there's a time where I was suicidal. There was a time where I, in sitting with what life was in that moment and understanding where I was, it was the question of, is this worth it? What am I doing here? And there was kind of a nihilistic energy to it, meaning there was a, there's a lack of meaning to life. There's a lack of purpose to all of this. And it's just this universe crashing around, end of story, nothing valuable, beautiful. That's all just the mind's interpretation. So I was really deep in that energy. And, there was weeks of just really intense depression. And if I left, would it be that big of a deal? And what got me through that is other experiences I had before that, whether it was with the monks or with my partner or whoever and whatever it was, to where it kind of distilled or instilled this, like, yeah, there is more. And yes, we make our own meaning, but there's inherent depth and beauty and goodness and truth to this experience that even if it's relative is profound and is a connection that even though I come in and out of with this universal unfolding that is profound. And so that really got me through it. And I got to, within that, walking through that darkness, that part of my shadow, actually in reflection has been one of the most powerful things because I was able to go into a place that my heart, my soul, part of me feared all my life. And to really walk into it eyes wide open and to stand there, even though it wasn't by choice, it kind of helped me release certain fears that had been tethering. So even though it was really dark, it became an untethering process and highly valuable.
Yeah, well, one, thank you for sharing that. I know that can't be easy, but I'm very glad that I did push a little and ask that question because I think that that's a great story to tell and for people to understand, and that someone like you, who by all metrics currently, from what I can tell, is pretty successful in life and has got a good thing going. And you have a successful business and a cool job and all this stuff that people would say like, wow, this guy's got it. And he's traveled the world and he's done this and that. And here you are contemplating ending my own life and what is the point of this life? And there's so much more nuance to everything that it's not just everything is good all the time. So I think that that's an important, just point to make for anyone listening. I say a lot on this podcast, we are humans and humans deal with human stuff. And this is all human stuff. This is not Paul stuff. This is not Harry stuff. This is human stuff. So anyone listening, I would think, can relate at some level, even if you've never been suicidal, but relate to the fact of dealing with that dark part of you and just being like, yeah, like, what is the point of all this? And it's a hard thing to wrestle with and grasp. And something that you mentioned when you were talking just now is that you said that even if it is all relative. So could you expand on that a little bit more, what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the relativity of it all is actually one of my favorite topics of being human because there's so many different developmental levels to our psychology and our ability to intake different information, to spirituality and the depths of spiritual connection that we can go into and so on and so forth. And on one of those levels, the recognition that, hey, life is relative based off of our subjective experience, our internal experience is really yours and mine are different to an extent because of our upbringing, because of our culture, because of society, because of the objective universe or the understanding of the objective universe that we grew up in. And so each one of those four factors always plays. And so my experience of reality might be different than yours. And so it actually creates a level of relativity to reality. It actually creates a level of, is it actually possible to objectify all of reality? The answer is no. even though the objectifying, the scientific, experiential part is highly valuable, there's more to it than just that. And so, who's to say on the highest level of what actually is the universe and fully the universe that this isn't all just some relative dream or some relative simulation or whatever it is. But for me, the answer is, well, even if it is, I don't have an answer there. Like, I've studied a lot of different traditions and say a lot of different things, and a lot of them make a lot of sense. But whatever the answer is, I'm here now. And the I am that is within that I am here now seems to be something beyond relativity. Even if the Harry that's speaking in the mind and emotions are all relative, transitory, they're all going to come and go. This part of me seems to be beyond that. And so it's connecting with myself on a deep level, connecting to others on a deep level who also have that, connecting to life, capital L, seems to be highly, highly valuable and important to me. So that's where I find worth, value, meaning, and connection in that space.
Yeah, I think that that's such an important point, and it's kind of like there is no answer, but now what do we do with that answer? I don't know the answer, but until someone figures it out, I'm going to do the best that I can, and that's kind of how I look at this whole thing. It's like I get this one life, and I'm going to make the most of it because that's what I know I have, and that kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk about next, which is I wanted to circle back. And you mentioned this just now, but you mentioned in the very beginning too about how your past experiences shape your current circumstances. And my question is then, is as you just said, that there is no such thing as subjective reality because your reality is different than my reality based on our upbringing, based on our race, our gender, based on the where we were born in the world. There's literally infinite different aspects of it. So as a coach, as an educator, how do you choose what is right to teach people if everyone is so different?
Yeah. What is right? Such a question. First, I want to say that I actually do value the subjective experience and actually call it real on some relative level. It influences our experience here. So I don't want to call it unreal, but in that relative reality and all the relative realities all around it, right and wrong kind of fall into a relative range as well. And so within that aspect, is anything right or wrong, or is it just the label that we've placed on the experience? In a war, don't both sides believe that in some way they're on the right side? They're fighting for what is valuable and meaningful to them in some capacity. Well, who's to say that they're wrong? As I say, right? So within that, it's always it's called, relativistic, pluralistic view, perspective, cultural relativism, conversation. However, there seem to be certain things that spread across or span across multiple cultures, generations, so on and so forth, that seem to be kind of some sort of informed. Does this cause suffering? Does this cause value? Those types of things. That I do my best to walk in alignment with within my own heart. So honestly, a lot of what I work with people on, it doesn't have to do with right or wrong. It has to do with their own reality. And we kind of sit with like, how do you feel about this? How does this impact? Are you aware of that? As we get clear on this, is this something you want to carry with you? And if there is something that is impacting other people, we double click on it hard. Like, hey, you have this habit that seems to be really difficult for your family members, if it's addiction or if it's something else. That let's take a closer look at. Are you okay now that we're aware of all the suffering that's going on around you as a result of this habit with causing that? And most of the time, the answer is like, no, that doesn't feel good to me. That doesn't feel in alignment to me. Okay, well, then that's the conversation that we're going to have. In my limited set of people, I haven't come across someone where I say like, hey, are you okay with this very suffering causing habit you have? I haven't come across anyone that says there's nothing wrong with it. There's usually some sort of internal guidance system that says like, yeah, I'd rather not be doing that if I had a choice. So I try to kind of flow into that, into their own internal guidance chip.
Yeah, I think that that is so powerful, and understanding that we all as humans probably at some level have an internal compass inside of us that's going to guide us at least most of the time. But I'd like you to talk about presence a little bit. You mentioned it earlier, and I'd like you to just expand on exactly what you mean by presence
and why you feel it's so important.
And presence is my favorite thing to talk about because it kind of encompasses everything we've already talked about. And then obviously the infinite subset of things we have not talked about. And so for me, presence is, am I aware of being present? Am I aware of being here? As I mentioned earlier, one of the main questions I ask people that I work with is, are you in the room? And if the answer is no, we just say, all right, why not? What's going on? And then we learn to become aware of the different things that take us out of the room. Talked earlier about a restless mind and the different mind things that can take us out of the room, thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, fantasizing about a different life than I have, things like that. Often when I'm present, I also mean the present to emotional pain, right? If I have trauma or PTSD, or if I just have a difficulty that I'm going through, a grief, rage, fear, shame, guilt, those are uncomfortable. And so I check out, I go watch Netflix for 4 hours, or I start numbing out with a bunch of junk food, or I turn to drugs and alcohol, whatever it might be. I don't want to demonize any of those activities, but why am I doing them? Well, because I don't want to be in my body right now. I don't want to be in my life in this moment. So I'm going to dull the pain. Totally get it. Right. Very difficult to be with at times. Sometimes it's physical pain. Yeah. I have chronic pain. I have acute pain. I have whatever it might be. Yeah. That sucks to be with sometimes. And then again, maybe I'm just bored. Maybe this moment is boring. If I sit in my room and look around, nothing's really moving. I see some dust settling, yawn. Don't really want to be here. So really what it does is presence for me brings us into what are all the ways I'm coping with reality. And all I need to do is sit down and stay in the room, and everything that blocks me from being here will arise eventually. So for me in my work that I do with people, that's all I need to do. It's just like, okay, let's come in the room. Okay, this is coming up. Well, that's the most relevant thing in your life in this moment, because it is the only thing in your life in this moment, because that's what we're present with. So that's where we're going to go in, and I help people process in those places, or teach them certain techniques to help bring them in the room in a deeper way and connect in a way that they might not have, or they've only done when they watched the sunset and they had this really beautiful feeling of connection. And like there was this larger unfolding of the universe or whatever it might be. So presence for me is really about, hey, let's let in ourselves, let's let in reality, and let's start to work with the ways that we're not in harmony with that.
Wow. I love that. And I think that I can see why that's your favorite subject, because it's so right on. And I encourage anyone who's listening to re-listen to this whole episode, because there's been gems, but specifically the last like 2 minutes or whatever it just was, because that question alone, are you in the room, is so powerful. And I think that it can easily be like overlooked and be like, okay, what does that even mean? But that can be literally everything. To bring this down from the 1,000-foot view to kind of really tactical, if we're talking about dieting, if we're talking about exercising, we're talking about doing your business. When you're sitting down to eat, are you in the room right now? Or are you scrolling on your phone, and are you thinking about this, or are you actually tasting the food that you eat? When you are going to do a workout, are you focusing on your muscles and your intent, and focusing on your body and feeling what it feels like to exercise? Or are you scrolling on Instagram in between every whatever thing that you're doing? When you're having dinner with your spouse, are you there in the room with them? But my question was just, a lot of these things that you talk about, that you teach about, that you've learned about, like mindset and mindfulness, especially in Eastern cultures, have been around for hundreds, if not tens of thousands of years. And they're becoming super in vogue right now in America, in Westernized cultures. And yet it's so hard for us to grasp. So where do you see that disconnect of being, for some people, it's so easy, and for some people, we can struggle for 30 years and never get it?
Yeah. My answer to that kind of comes into, like you mentioned earlier, there's always going to be people who, on the psychological scale, just aren't going to have the compass inside of them. And some people who already do, then the people are kind of being informed by theirs slowly. I think with everything, you're going to have the naturals. You're going to have the people who it is just going to be an uphill battle their entire life. And then you're going to have a lot of I like to call them the Humpty Dumptys, that if they just get the right information at the right time and stick with it long enough, they'll get pushed to the right side of things. And it'll be a really beneficial practice for their life. So I think that, you're just always going to get that bell curve. And within it, yeah, we live in a time where it's easier than ever to get caught in stimulation, but we also live in a time where there's more access to global information. And that includes these teachings that have been around for a very long time that are great ways to deepen our connection to ourselves, to others, to life. So there's a rising of the duality. And so it's, yeah, for a lot of people more difficult than potentially ever before. I don't want to say that 100%, but also we have more tools than potentially ever before and more access to knowledge and information. So it's a strange world that we live in, but if we continuously practice the mindfulnesses and meditations, the presences, um, it leads to really, really powerful things.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the bell curve. I think this is such an important thing to understand. It's just that, as you said, some people are going to be those, this is just easy for me. Some people are going to be, this is impossible for me. And some people are going to be right in the middle. And accepting and respecting where you are and which one of those people you are for that particular thing, I think is a necessary part of a happy life. Wanting it to be another way is just setting yourself up for failure because it isn't. It is the way that it is, and it isn't the way that it isn't. So when I think about how do I make a happy life, acceptance is the one word if I could leave people with and just be like, we have to be able to accept what is, for better or for worse. But when I say that, people often go, but aren't you supposed to want to change things? Isn't change the whole thing too? So how do I balance the need for acceptance, but also that everything good in life comes on the other side of change?
Yeah, that was number one, well said. And I also agree. I think acceptance is a paramount teaching, a paramount understanding of coming into reality and presence. It's learning to just be in harmony with what is. And so then my answer to your question of like, okay, but what about change? What about like, if I look out the window, there's a lot of things going on in the world that are causing a lot of suffering. Do I just leave that as is? And so for me, acceptance, there's the external acceptance and the internal acceptance. And so part of the acceptance is, oh my gosh, I'm having this immense yearning to go and help this specific group of people, environmentalist, vegan, feeding the homeless, whatever it might be. Okay, well, can you accept that energy inside of you? Can you follow it? And so a lot of the time, acceptance actually if true acceptance is going to lead you to potentially take more action than you ever have before, because there's been resistance to doing. Right? Acceptance is both a being and doing. And so sometimes it's like, okay, it's game time. Other times it is, okay, it's time to step back and stop trying to fix everything because that's just my own trauma playing here. And so there's a nuanced relationship with acceptance, and it does take practice and time to understand, is this mine? Is this not mine? Is this coming from a deep place? Is this coming from a traumatized place? Whatever it is. But yes, absolutely. I would say acceptance and change are inherently coupled, and action and acceptance are also not separate. Right? They mean the same thing at times.
That was an awesome breakdown. I really enjoyed that. So I have just one more question for you before we start to wrap up. And that's, your studies, again, we talked about how you have this wide berth of knowledge, right? From martial arts to Christianity to Buddhism to all these different things that you've studied. And I like that they're in different, like some are religious, but I think that martial arts teaches us a lot too, and strength training and sports psychology. So I'm wondering if there's any single or more than that thread that you've kind of seen that goes through all of these different teachings that you're kind of like, oh, like this is the same over here as it was over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say that we've covered this in depth at this point. It's presence. Like that for me is the reason why, after all this time and all these different kind of teachings, learnings, and applications, that's the thing I talk about most, is because I noticed that my presence was impacted by every single one of those, or my presence impacted every single one of those. And so, whether it was the mindset work and learning to set goals and reach goals and understand how my positive psychology versus not positive psychology influence those, or it was somatic work and trauma work and shadow work of going into my childhood and with psychotherapy and understanding my traumas, or it was meditation and mindfulness and living with the monks and really learning to just be present with life. Like all of those things, again, were impacted by presence or impacted my presence. So I just, it started to show me like, hey, this is in every domain on every level, whether you're someone who's deeply spiritual, going for enlightenment, or you're someone who's just trying to, be happier and want a little bit less stress, or you're someone who wants deeper connections with other people, or you're someone who just wants a fitter body. Like, it doesn't matter what domain you're in. The more present you are and aware you are of this process, the more informed by your own experience you're going to be, and the more self-sovereign you're going to become, and the more you're going to be able to be guided by that deeper understanding, which is just going to deepen your presence, and it's going to become a positive feedback that's going to really unfold your life in a pretty magical way, honestly. So yeah, going back to presence, that's kind of my answer to a lot of things these days.
Yeah, that's great. And honestly, that what you just said there in those last 30 seconds, we could go for a whole nother hour on, because you said self-sovereignty, which is something that I'm huge on. And I think that that's a big deal. But I'll leave that question for another day, because I think that will open up a whole other can of worms. My last question that I want to leave you with is, I ask every guest on here to leave my listeners with one single action step that they can take right now, as soon as they put their headphones or their phone down, to start living a healthier, happier life. So what would that be?
And get in the room, come into the room, bring your awareness into the room, look around you. And then once you're in the room for maybe 20, 30 seconds, ask 4 things of yourself. Number 1, what's happening in my body right now? And spend as much time as you need to come into connection with that. So, okay, I notice I have some tension in my gut, my hips are a little tight, my heart's beating a little fast, whatever it is. What's happening emotionally in this moment? Are there any emotions? Can I recognize any emotions? They're always there. Most of the time, they're like that background refrigerator noise that we just aren't aware of until it's off. And then it's, oh my gosh, pay attention to the emotions. What does my mind have to say about it is the third thing, because it has to say something about everything. It's interpreting. When you bring awareness, your mind's going to come in and say, well, this is how, this is where you're wrong, and this is where you need to grow, and whatever it is, what's happening in the mind. And the fourth thing is this okay? Can I bring acceptance and compassion to where I am as a human in this moment? A lot of the constant mental chatter, or a lot of the wanting life to be different, is a lack of accepting ourselves, where we are, how we are. I'm not perfect. I'm not what I want to be. Can I bring acceptance and compassion into this moment? So what's happening physically, mentally, emotionally, and can I bring acceptance to that and practice that as much as you want? And I can guarantee you the presence and the awareness that will come out of that, and the acceptance and compassion that will come out of that, will be impactful in your life.
What a powerful conversation. It's so interesting to me to learn from people who have led such colorful and unique lives. And the wisdom that Harry just dropped came from monks, yogis, universities, and his life as a whole. If there's anything that you can take away from this conversation, I think it would be the power of presence and awareness. Those are things that sound simple on the outside, but they are the type of skills that you can work your entire life and still not really understand. But lucky for you, you don't need to be a master of these things to start reaping the rewards. You can start to be a little more present and a little more aware today, and you will immediately start seeing positive benefits all over your life. That is change made easy. If you're working on changing your diet, exercise, or other habits around food and fitness, you have to check out My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the world's leading nutrition coaching platform that helps people find their healthy weight and keep it forever through sustainable habit change. And you know, as a listener of this show, that when it comes to creating change, it's all about sustainability and consistency. And when it comes to diet, exercise, and getting in shape, My Body Tutor solves the problem of consistency through one-on-one coaching, customized plans, and daily accountability. And as a bonus for you, they're offering $50 off your first month. But what really makes My Body Tutor so unique is they offer daily accountability with a real human coach. And I know because I'm one of them. I have been working with My Body Tutor since 2020. There's so much misinformation, so much nonsense out there in the health and wellness space. but not with My Body Tutor. My Body Tutor is the real deal. They are changing lives. I've seen it, I've been a part of it, and I'm honored to continue to grow with them. And you don't have to take my word for it. Check out mybodytutor.com, where you will see hundreds of testimonials and reviews. And as a special bonus, for listeners of this show, you will get $50 off your first month. Just click the link in the show notes or go to mybodytutor.com and tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you in your intake questionnaire, and you'll automatically get a huge discount. And remember, they offer a money-back, risk-free guarantee, so this is a no-brainer for you. And no joke, I really do work for them. So if you want to work with me personally, ask for Paul as your tutor. Once again, tell them Paul from Change Made Easy sent you for $50 off your first month. Start with no risk and see how the power of a coach with daily accountability can literally change your life.